Well, also today in France, Emmanuel Macron is in talks with the Prime Minister, also with members of his ruling party, one day before that new strike tomorrow. Well, for more on those meetings that are happening now, let's bring in France 24's senior reporter Catherine Norris Trent at the Elysée Presidential Palace. Catherine, what more do we know about the real focus of these meetings today? Is this mostly about damage control at this point?
I think it is, Jeannie. At this stage, Emmanuel Macron is inside the Elysée Palace. He's been joined by his Prime Minister, Elisabeth Borne, as well as key members of their ruling party, as well as his one-time Prime Minister, Edouard Philippe, who some seen as an attempt for him to try and broaden out beyond his current party in power. There's also government ministers inside and the head of the ruling party in the lower house of parliament and the Senate. And they're basically trying to come up with some action plan, a way out of this political crisis. They're going to try and reach out to other political parties and to the trade union movements. But so far, that hasn't been accepted, that olive branch. The unions are saying that they don't want to talk with the government unless this very controversial law on pension reforms is withdrawn. Now, just a reminder, it has actually gone through both houses of parliament, albeit being forced through by the use of this very controversial 49(3) article of the French constitution, which is kind of like a decree. So now it just basically needs to be approved by the Constitutional Court and then signed into law by Emmanuel Macron. So it's not clear at this stage how, if they were planning to climb down, they would do so. And it doesn't seem like in the past few days Emmanuel Macron's signalled that he wants to climb down. There's perhaps a feeling on behalf of the French government that they want to persist with this and see if the protest movements die down and the anger dwindles somewhat. But it doesn't seem at this stage from the reactions we've been having on the streets and from the unions that that is the case.
Well, Catherine, let's talk more about the strike movement, which is ongoing. I was mentioning that 10th major strike date tomorrow. What's being planned?
Major strikes and protests are planned for France again on Tuesday. So we're bracing for more of those violent scenes potentially, as well as travel chaos and perhaps more and more petrol refineries and petrol stations being blocked. Around 15% of French petrol stations are currently affected. In some areas of the west of France, half of petrol stations are running out of fuel, so that's something that could grow. There's still problems with garbage, with rubbish on the streets of Paris, which still hasn't been collected yet, even though the government's ordered refuse collectors to get back to work. That's still lining some of the streets because the waste incineration plants and the waste treatment plants are being blocked by strikers. And this Monday in Paris, even the Louvre Museum is closed because of strikers blockading there. And perhaps in a worrying sign for the government, lots of French high schools have been blockaded by youths, and at least one university is also being blockaded. And we know the authorities are worried that if this strike movement, blockade movement really becomes a mass movement among youth in France, that could prove very difficult indeed for it to end.
All right, Catherine, thanks for that. Catherine Norris Trent there reporting for us from the Elysée Presidential Palace.